everybody. Welcome to another episode of Healing Matters. I am your host, Lady D, and this is a special episode. Oh my goodness, we are going to walk through a journey, a surprise nonetheless, a twist and a turn down my health journey. I survived all of 2020, just like you guys, through the crazy pandemic none of us expected, through social distance, through virtual learning, through gathering but not gathering, and keeping our core group to a minimum of 5. And I navigated through that, but never did I expect to get COVID in January of 2021. What a surprise, certainly. And so, we're going to talk about that. I am just honored and blessed to be able to share my story with you. So my journey began celebrating the new year with friends and my children. And we had such a wonderful time. It was just us 5. And we celebrate the new year. Traditionally, we are in our local church service, bringing in the new year with a sermon and praise and worship. But unfortunately, because of COVID and social distance, we weren't able to do that this year. So we decided to just stay home, order some takeout, and say a prayer of thankfulness. So we went around the table and shared a prayer of thankfulness, what God had brought us through 2021. And it was such a blessed evening. It was such a good thing to be able to have an intimate setting with my children and some friends, our core 5, and bringing the new year, even though it was different and I would have loved to have been at service and celebrating with the congregation and everything, but just because the timing of everything, we're not in that season anymore. So I was just grateful to share the moment and be able to see the new year of 2021, because unfortunately COVID-19 has hit so many homes. Thousands and thousands of people have died due to COVID, and so many more are suffering because of this pandemic. And so I thought it was, wonderful and fitting for just us to say a prayer and to be thankful and grateful for, us being alive and well and in our right mind and in a healthy body, to honor the Lord and say, thank you, God, for bringing us through such a tragic time and seeing fit for us to be able to be together. And so, I celebrated the new year. I was super excited to, get things accomplished and write down my dreams for 2021. And I was able to do that a little bit, but surprise, I got a phone call on January 8th that on January 5th, I was in close contact with someone who had COVID. And so this was one of my core people, and to my surprise and to her surprise, we were not expecting. We did everything right. We washed our hands, we sanitized, we had our masks, we were social distancing, but someone in the group did not know at the time they had COVID. So they didn't have the symptoms, they weren't anything. They was basically in the early stages. So there was no way for us to, do anything else but then what we normally do, which was, wear our mask, wash our hands, keep our social distance. This was part of our core 5. So these are the people that we had been around, over and over again. This was nothing new. The environment wasn't new. Everything was the same as usual. But yes, I got the call saying that, we had been in close contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID, and they had did the contact tracing and contacted me. And so my mind immediately went to freak out mode. I went to nervousness. I went to, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I went over in my mind the people I had been in contact with. I had been in contact with my son, bringing him back and forth to work. My daughter had been in contact with my mom. She had did her hair. I went to go see another friend who was a part of my core five. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I went to go see my aunt who is elderly and has some underlying conditions. So she is the high risk group as well. And my mind just went to all these people that had been in contact, their jobs, who they've been in contact with. And I'm like, oh my God, I could have endangered my loved ones because the symptoms that I experienced. Let's talk about the symptoms. So the symptoms I experienced was body aches. I usually have body aches because I have rheumatoid arthritis. Fatigue. I usually suffer from fatigue because I have fibromyalgia. I was getting headaches, but occasionally I get headaches if I overexert myself. So I was getting the headaches. But what really made me say, maybe this is something else, was a sore throat. So all the symptoms that I was experiencing was me feeling like, oh, this is my normal RA fibromyalgia stuff. This is, I was a little extra achy, but where I live in Rhode Island, that week it was bitter cold. It was about maybe 9 degrees. And so for me, the coldness makes my joints even more stiff. It's hard to get out of bed. I just move really slow because my joints just suffer so bad in the cold. So I thought, okay, this is my usual RA fibromyalgia stuff. But then when the sore throat came, I was like, oh, that's a little odd. And then the next day, I started losing my voice. And I was like, okay, well, that's a little unusual. And then it went away. And then by that Saturday, I was coughing and I had cold-like symptoms. So now I'm like, okay, I'm coughing. I have the runny nose. I have the congestion. It's time to get tested. And so I got the call. I started panicking. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Got a test on Saturday. Got the results on that Sunday that I was indeed positive. My children that live with me, their test came back negative. So I was excited that they were negative. We quarantined. My kids stayed in their room. If they did have to use the restroom or the common area, the kitchen, they had Lysol, they had wipes. My daughter had gloves on. They had double mask on. And I made sure each time that I used the facilities or the kitchen that everything was sprayed down with antibacterial spray. Everything was wiped down. The dishes were constantly washed in water with bleach. So I was taking the necessary precautions as much as I could to make sure that things weren't contaminated, to make sure that my kids didn't get it. And so I was kind of like, okay, I got it. But the whole time I was like, oh my goodness, is it going to get worse? So I've seen on the news where people that were healthy, athletes, people that were in tip-top shape, talk about one day it got worse. And so I was waiting for the day when, oh my goodness, it's going to get worse. And by that Monday, January 10th, it did start to get worse. The coughing was out of control. I would have these coughing fits where I would cough for at least a minute or two, and then it would just be nonstop. I would have to take, a sip of water, try to walk around to kind of calm myself down, because once I started coughing, there was no stopping. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is really bad. My chest was hurting. I was congested. I was coughing up mucus. And I just felt horrible on top of the muscle weakness, the muscle achiness, the headache. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, my body's going through. And this is very, let me say, this was very, very, very different from my rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. Like if I'm going into a flare. So this was very different. This was more of a fatigue where I slept most of the day. Usually with a fibro flare or a rheumatoid arthritis flare, I can get things done for a couple of hours, then I need a break, take a nap. But this was a consuming fatigue where you get up to go to the bathroom, you try to eat a little something, and you go back to sleep for 4 or 5 hours, which I am not accustomed to at all, even dealing with chronic illness. I mean, just to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom was just too much for me. And it really started to get in my head. I felt like COVID was playing mind tricks and mind games with me, if that makes sense. Because even though my situation wasn't terrible, as in to go to the hospital, it was bad enough where I'm like, oh my God, am I going to get to that point? And so a couple of days into having COVID, I had my kids tested again, and they did come back positive. They came back positive. Which was scary for me because now the whole household is infected. We no longer did walk around with masks. There was no point since my kids had COVID. My daughter had it the worst. My oldest daughter had it the worst. She had coughness. She lost her taste. She lost her sense of smell. Fatigue. My youngest son, he had the headaches and he had some fatigue. But he did not really get the coughing. He didn't get any of the body aches. He didn't get any other symptoms, just the headache and the fatigue, which was more than enough doing virtual schooling. He did his best and attended class virtually and, did his homework and did everything as usual. But once virtual class was over, I mean, he was in bed resting and trying to shake off the headaches the best he could. He didn't take any medicine. He's a trooper. He does not take medicine ever, hardly ever. And he's one of my kids that hardly ever gets sick as well. So if he's sick, I mean, it's a big deal because he doesn't get sick. But he took it pretty good. I made sure they drank ginger tea with honey. I tried to make sure that we were eating soup. I had a host of friends that came by and dropped off soup and supplies, and I upped my vitamin regimen. I doubled up on a lot of different things that I felt I needed. I also took the antibody infusion. And so I feel like that really helped me. And it didn't make the symptoms of COVID-19 as worse as they could be or as bad as they could be. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for the infusion. I'm really grateful that my doctor suggested it, my rheumatologist. And this is where having a good rheumatologist and a good PCP comes in handy, because situations like this, you cannot risk someone misjudging your symptoms. You can't risk someone putting you in a position where your immune system is even more compromised. You need to make sure, there are no drug interactions. And so I'm grateful that my rheumatologist did the research and thought that this was a good idea for me to take the infusion. Now the infusion, I'm very familiar with infusions. I used to take rituximab infusion the first couple of years of my diagnosis with rheumatoid arthritis and dermatomyositis. So I'm very familiar with Rituxan. However, this infusion is like a traditional infusion, except for it was 1 hour. I was very tired the day of, like really exhausted after I had the infusion. And so I basically slept the day of my infusion and I slept the next day. I didn't have any nauseousness, no vomiting, no side effects, just very, very tired. And I was expecting that because I am used to taking infusions. I'm very familiar with what could happen, what may happen the day of. Some people may have allergic reactions. That has never been the case for me taking Rituxan. It has just been extreme fatigue. And so I was really happy that there weren't any side effects. That was a concern for me. Another concern for me was having an allergic reaction while I was taking the infusion at the clinic. Only because I didn't know how they would handle that. They did discuss, they had Benadryl on hand to bring the reaction down. But as you know, everybody responds differently when they have an allergic reaction. So even though they might be traditionally prepared to handle allergic reaction, doesn't mean that your reaction might be traditional. And with my health, nothing is traditional. Everything is brand spanking new. And so I try to not get in my head about certain things, but I'm also aware that things usually go to the left when I have a reaction or some kind of something doesn't go right with me. So yeah, that experience was a good experience, and I'm grateful that I was able to go home after an hour. I was able to rest. I was able to, even though I was dealing with COVID, just really feel reassured that there's something out here for people that are high risk. I felt like, this is something that people need. I can't afford to go to the hospital. If my COVID was bad and I was rushed to the hospital, I firmly believe they would have kept me. And I firmly believe that my symptoms would have got worse and possibly would have died because I have so many underlying conditions. I'm on 2 immunosuppressant drugs. 2 immunosuppressant drugs, and there's a lot going on in my body. And so I know that people being overworked, hospitals being understaffed, things get overlooked, and I did not want to go to the hospital at all. At all costs, I was willing to fight COVID at home with my children. At all costs, I was willing to do what I could on my end to get better. And I believe this infusion was the right choice for me. I believe that, with prayer and asking God for guidance to get me through COVID, me and my children, because I spent all 2020 doing the right things. I spent all 2020 talking to my kids about social distancing. They didn't see their friends. The first 5 months COVID hit, we actually didn't leave the house until Mother's Day. And that's only because we celebrated Mother's Day with my mom. And so I was really determined to keep my family and my household safe. And in the summer months of 2020, I had my core group, my 5 people, and that was enough for me. That was enough for me to say, hey, this is what's going to keep me safe. We're going to make a pledge that we're going to see each other. We're going to do what we can to stay healthy. And that was good enough. And I made my children do the same thing. Pick your people. And luckily, these were people that they had played basketball with at their local high school. These are people that, are family members, a couple of family members. And so it wasn't really hard for them to narrow down their core group of who was going to be able to come to our house and who they was able to see. And so that really was a decision that we made together as a family. I let my kids know that, Mom can't afford to get sick. My mindset in 2020 was, if I get COVID, I'm dead. That was my mindset. Because I just seen too many cases on TV, read too many articles online about people just dying. And they were all healthy people. So I felt like, man, I am the worst person to get COVID. My body is already a mess. It's already a mess. And so I thought if I got COVID, it was a death sentence. But now that I've survived COVID, I actually feel like it was an awakening for me and my kids, that everybody deserves to live, everybody should live, but we are not promised tomorrow. We are not promised tomorrow. And so my takeaway from coming out of COVID is to enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment intensely. Enjoy the moment on purpose. Enjoy the moment in doing the things that you want to do right now. Like right now. There's no bucket list. There's no when I get the money. It's right now. It's right now. And I came out of COVID making a conscious decision that I am going to enjoy life right now, because the way the pandemic is going and has gone, things change daily. And as a believer, the word says that heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word will remain. So for me, that says all this can come into an end at any time. And because I survived COVID, me, a chosen vessel, no goodness of my own, nothing special that I've done, me, a chosen vessel to survive COVID, means that God has something more for me. And God has something more for you. Anytime you survive something, anytime you've overcome, anytime you've gotten victory, there's something bigger. And my something bigger is to share my story with you, my audience. Thank you for watching. And to empower you and to inspire you and to help you be your best self. And I believe COVID was that one thing that I feared so much, but God allowed me to get. And He protected me through it. And He protected my kids through it. But He allowed me to get to say, you know what? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I am the God that healeth thee. I stand on that scripture all the time. He is the God that healeth thee. He is the God that healeth me, you, and so many other survivors, not just of COVID-19, but of domestic violence, of so many other things, of being mistreated badly, of abuse, verbal, physical, mental, emotional. Survivors of breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, survivors. There's so many survivors. We could go on and on. But you survive with purpose, on purpose. And I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be encouraged. Even though we are going through this pandemic together, individually, it should be our will to survive. It should be our desire to survive. It should be our desire to live our best life right now. Because who knows, tomorrow our loved ones might not be there. Our friends might not be there. Our job might not be there. Our favorite place to go might not be there. This has all been proven during COVID-19 pandemic. This has all been proven. But if we have a determination to live in the moment, to enjoy today, this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice. I will make a conscious decision to rejoice, to be glad in it. I will make a conscious decision, declare with me, I will make a conscious decision to rejoice and to be glad in it. Wherever you are today, wherever you find yourself today, make a conscious decision to live on purpose. live in truth, live in happiness, live in joy, live in peace, live in love, live and laugh, live and laugh. Laughter is good for the soul. Laughter is medicine. Laughter and healing is healing. Laughter is good. All these things together can make a really good life, even in a bad situation. Even in a bad situation. At the end of our quarantine, I gathered my children together and we said a prayer of thankfulness. Each of my children said the prayer, and as we held hands and prayed, I was grateful that we were still standing, that we were still together, that we came out healthy, that we came out better than ever. And I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful that I could share this experience with you. I'm so grateful. And I'm even more grateful that even though COVID has taken some people out of here, you are able to watch this show. You are able to see that it's possible to survive anything. It is possible to survive anything. The worst of the worst. The worst of the worst. The worst is getting COVID. That is the worst. That's people's nightmare. But if I can survive it, you can survive it. And I don't necessarily mean getting COVID, but you can survive this pandemic. You can make it through this alive and well. And I believe with you that you are going to make it through alive and well. So this has been Healing Matters. I am your host, Lady D. Remember, your healing matters. Thanks for watching.